This is Newsmax TV. I'm Ashley Martella. We welcome Florida Senate President Jeff Atwater. He served in the state legislature since 2000, his district including Palm Beach and Broward counties, and he's a candidate for Florida's chief financial officer. He's a banker by profession. In 2007, Mr. Atwater was named one of the 40 most powerful people in Palm Beach County. He was the recipient of many awards from various civic and professional organizations, and in 2006, he received the Christian Coalition of Florida's Faith and Family Award. Welcome to Newsmax, Senator.
Good to be with you, Ashley. Thank you.
A USA Today poll shows Florida as the biggest loser in the federal stimulus payout, this despite having the 5th highest unemployment rate in the country at 11.4%. Now, it ranks dead last in stimulus benefits per resident. What do you think about that? Can anything be done to correct that?
Well, I think let me take it from 2 points first. First off, is the stimulus helping America? I mean, that's one question. And so as the Washington begins to wrestle with what next, what I hope they wrestle with is putting back our confidence in the entrepreneurs of America and not putting more stimulus on the table to indebt future generations to pay it back. So if I could begin there. Now, to your point, as to what was already initiated in Washington, D.C., that would take those who are representing us in D.C. to make our case. I mean, we are 19 million now Floridians. We are soon to be the 3rd largest state in the country. And if someone is believing that stimulus dollars are going to be important for this economy, let us hope that they are putting that into infrastructure, roads and transportation, constructions of educational facilities. And if they are, I would expect that our voices in Washington would make the case that this is where those investments should be made. This is the state where that kind of infrastructure should be made. But frankly, my hope is that they stop the stimulus spending and they get on with trusting the entrepreneurial spirit in America.
Okay. Even though Florida has a high jobless rate, its payout in unemployment compensation is the 4th lowest in the country. If you're elected chief financial officer, would you be in favor of increasing that a bit?
You know what, let me again go back to maybe I might say a broader question. We want the unemployment compensation to be fair. To that extent, the chief financial officer with the Florida legislature should be thinking about what's fair for Floridians and what's right for Floridians. People who are down and out because of the economic environment that we're in today. And so yes, I would want to see our Floridians being compensated for that period of time where that hardship is real until they can connect, being fair and square and being able to be compensated fairly. But what we can't do is have Washington continue to extend and extend and extend benefits that all the other Floridians who are hanging on to their jobs, some, as you know, Ashley, by their fingernails, that we would continue to extend and extend and extend benefits to where whether or not someone is aggressively seeking the next employment opportunity. So it's a balancing act.
I'm thinking of somebody watching this right now who's asking, what is Florida's chief financial officer? Could you just explain basically what it is?
Sure, because many people ask, do we really have a chief financial officer? Chief financial officer has a couple of roles. First, they are the keeper of the state checkbook. They are paying on every check. That person in that role, we should decide as Floridians, should be someone who cares deeply that the money actually stay in the Floridian's pocket or in the small business owner's pocket and not even make its way through Tallahassee in the first place. So every check you sign for a contract that the state of Florida is engaged in for the good of our fellow Floridian, the contract better be clear. It better have benchmarks for success. There better be a way out of it. Somebody ought to be held accountable. Chief financial officer ought to think carefully before they sign every check. They're also a regulator, and they regulate the banking and insurance world, the securities world. Those are extensions of credit and investment that the chief financial officer needs to be sure they're mindful that as a regulator, they want a Florida that attracts capital, that will grow business, that believes in the entrepreneurs of the state. That's the kind of mindset that I think you'd want in that regulator. So watching your dollars, letting Floridians keep their dollars, grow their business, and the dollars that have to come through Tallahassee, be sure they're wisely deployed for the good of all Floridians. That's the role.
As you well know, Florida has a huge home foreclosure problem. Yeah. The Obama administration recently initiated a mortgage modification program to help homeowners. As a banker, what do you think of that program? Is it working? Is it a good idea?
Well, here's the thing. Bankers, from the very beginning of their training, know they never want the asset back that they're lending on. They want the small business owner to keep the shop. They want the homeowner to stay in the home. And they need to be thoughtful in modifying mortgages so that they're not forcing a take back of a collateral. They want that to work. So I think the spirit is right. But, again, I might suggest that what you can't have is a regulatory environment presently that's on the banks and on the credit unions that is making them mark all their assets to what present market value is and go make a cash call on these small poor business owners who are trying to get by. We need to take a deep breath, trust in the people that are out there building these businesses and in our homes making their home mortgage payments, and not be trying to make a regulator happy by forcing people out of their houses now. So it's frankly, there's more regulatory pressure coming on forcing banks to have to go after these the mortgage owners or the property owners rather than allowing the banks to work with them. So I think the spirit is right. Let us modify mortgages, keep people in their homes.
The Democrats' health care plan includes draconian cuts to Medicare, specifically Medicare Advantage. Then you have the complaint from some states that it also includes a dramatic expansion of Medicaid, which is a state burden.
Right.
How is it going to affect Florida with all the seniors and retirees we have here?
It'll be catastrophic for Florida's financial situation on every hardworking Floridian that's going to be tapped to come up with more money to cover all of this. That's the reality. So I might say from the very outset, the Obamacare program is a disaster. Here you're talking about trying to shift cost out of where the real cost should be addressed. Presently today in Florida, there is one line item that is 25% of the entire state budget. That's Medicaid. That's providing health care services to a fellow Floridian that presently is struggling economically, and that's a compassionate thing to do. But for the federal government to now change the standards by which someone comes into the Medicaid program could virtually double the size of Medicaid's enrollment in Florida. So imagine if it's today 25% of the budget, that could grow to become 35%, 40%, up to 50% of the budget. Well, where does that come from? They keep saying, well, the federal government will pick up the tab. Well, who actually is the federal government? That's every hardworking Floridian. What they're saying is, we'll just tap more out of your income, send it to Washington, to send it back to Tallahassee to create a government-run health program rather than the health program that's been working for you. So it's a disaster on all fronts.
Florida's Attorney General, Bill McCollum, is one of 14 attorneys general suing the federal government for the Obamacare mandates.
Right.
Your thoughts on that?
And he should, and he's going to win. And you're already starting to see this playing out in Virginia. I am proud of what Bill McCollum is doing. He is saying the federal government is not going to establish penalties, or now what they're now calling, to try to win a lawsuit, a tax on Floridians for buying something that they don't believe that they need. And so I'm a fan of his lawsuit. I am a fan of the mindset that the federal government should not be creating taxes or penalties upon Americans for buying products that they want them to own.
Okay, you pledged to protect Florida taxpayers from fraud, waste, and abuse. In what area are those transgressions the most prominent?
There are several big areas. People across Florida are paying more for auto insurance than they should because we haven't taken auto insurance fraud seriously enough. And this past session, we moved and created a fraud task force underneath the CFO role so that the CFO could bring different agency heads together, law enforcement together, and go after it. Why should we accept that our fellow Floridian, working hard to get by, has an embedded cost in their car insurance because we're not going to go after those players who are committing the fraud? Seriously enough. The second I would tell you is health care fraud. It's Medicaid fraud. I mentioned before, it's 25% of our state's budget. That's $20 billion now. We estimate that about $2 billion of that is fraud. Now you tell me where you could be ripping off the private sector for $2 billion a year in the state and we wouldn't have gotten serious enough to fix it. This is the money from the people of Florida heading to Tallahassee and being redispersed in Medicaid. Medicaid fraud is the biggest issue we have going, and we should be relentless to go after it and merciless on the individual who's been perpetuating it when we find them. Keep money in the hands of Floridians and at least reimburse a doctor a fair rate to see a fellow Floridian on a reimbursement rate. Don't let it go to fraud.
Who are the culprits in the fraud?
Oh, they're all over the board. There are certain, regrettably, there are certain individuals within the medical profession that have chosen to frankly, establish shops with real criminals and perpetuators of these crimes and mask it. Those should be unacceptable, and our Florida doctors don't want to see that. They want to see those people addressed. There are others who within the medical device industry that are setting up a shop on a strip center, providing oxygen tanks and wheelchairs, billing for what's never actually been received by the customer, getting a hold of Medicaid and Social Security numbers and just billing the state and billing the federal government. Those are the kinds of players who are doing it. and we shouldn't have any qualms about putting these people in real public housing or prisons around Florida.
Okay, and Republicans like yourself in the state legislature passed a bill that would have wiped out, eliminated the tenure pay system for teachers. Right. That was vetoed by Governor Charlie Crist.
Right.
Assuming Republicans retain control of the Florida State House and the Senate,
right.
Would you like to see another go at this, depending on who the new governor is?
I think there will be a go at what really is championing teachers and championing a teacher by way of compensating them a real quality paycheck for the dedication they make to Florida's future. And that's what that bill was about. It was about what was called merit pay. It was a teacher that year in and year out is showing learning gains in their classroom above the averages. Why wouldn't we compensate them more to stay there? Those who have not yet achieved that success with their classes over time, let's invest more time in their development and their training. Let's mentor those. So the end game was elevating the real importance of the role of teaching and offering merit pay there, and that was nothing to be afraid of. And I would hope that the legislature, like other states are now visiting the conversation that we had, will take a greater bit of time. We'll spend more time with our teachers in that conversation, and in the end, elevate the role of teaching in America, elevate the role in teaching in Florida by compensating these teachers for their extraordinary work, their extraordinary successes, and their extraordinary dedication to the youth of the state. So I hope we do, because there is nothing more important than the role of the teacher, and I want to see them compensated for that.
And finally, Arizona's immigration law. Would
Sure.
you like to see something similar here in Florida?
You know, the first role of government is to protect its citizens and their property. And when the federal government fails, and doesn't just fails, you know, around the edges, in this case fails miserably, to allow someone to be able to farm their land without the risk of being murdered on their own property, drug smuggling, the kidnapping capital of the world being near the border, Arizona had every right to provide a safe and secure environment for their citizens. And every single state should have that same right. And if the federal government isn't going to do their job, they should not be suing a state for doing the job that they're failing to do. Arizonans, I think, had the right idea. Secure their border, provide safety for their fellow citizens, and any state that wishes to do the same should be championed by the federal government, not sued by the federal government.
Florida State Senate President and candidate for the state's Chief Financial Officer, Jeff Atwater. Thanks so much for talking with us here at Newsmax, and good luck to you.
Thanks, Ashley. Good to be with you.
And thank you for watching Newsmax TV.